In 2020, an exciting news is circulating among several ports in India. Tesla is looking for a way to enter the Indian market and will open an R&D center in Bangalore. The news originated from Musk's social media posting that Tesla will enter the Indian market in 2021. Two top Indian ports, Kandla and Mundra, are vying to pull in Tesla. The future picture painted by the Indian media is like this, with Tesla as the starting point. Made in India's new energy vehicles will be rapidly attacked through maritime transportation into the two global new energy vehicle markets of China and Europe. After that, India's new energy automobile industry chain will continue to grow, superimposed on India's demographic dividend and India's local market to gather 1.4 billion people's consumption potential. India will become the largest market in the global new energy automobile market. In 5G, AI, big data, cloud computing and other assistants, the future of new energy vehicles and smart transportation, smart city integration, reduced traffic jams, convenient for people to travel, and integrated into the smart grid, transformed into energy storage terminals, as well as most importantly, new energy vehicles, hardware and software interaction qualities for artificial intelligence and other technologies to provide the evolution of the real-world soil. The reality of the soil. However, on the other hand, new energy vehicles and traditional fuel vehicles will remain in a competitive rather than substitutive relationship for quite some time. That is to say, today and for quite some time in the future, China's new energy vehicles are rivaled by Japanese, German, and other old traditional fuel vehicles. Their strong supply chain and sales system, brand value, and more than 10,000 parts and components of the automotive industry barriers and firmly occupy the old market of fuel vehicles. Will be China's new energy vehicles need to drive over the mountain. In this context, objectively speaking, Indian cars are not qualified to become China's new energy vehicles compared to the object. But India may not see it that way. India's relevant departments have also formulated a new route for the automotive industry. By 2030, the proportion of new energy private vehicles should be above 30%, and the penetration rate of new energy commercial vehicles should be 70%. In May 2022, Musk vetoed the possibility of building a factory in India. I think the fundamental reason is still that the two sides have different demands. As a company, Tesla heavy profit, to build a factory in India, to first examine the local consumer market in India. In short, Tesla seems to be more inclined to sell cars first, then build a factory. For example, Tesla's super factory in Shanghai, of which 1/3 of the production capacity is digested by the Chinese market. The Indian government's attitude is want to sell cars, first build a factory with foreign car companies to build factories. The weak Indian new energy automobile industry chain has the opportunity to grow. Musk has also spit on the media. The Indian government requires at least 30% of the new energy vehicle parts need to purchase locally produced in India. India believes that there are three treasures: demographic dividend, market potential and policy force. After the reopening, China also rely on these three advantages, from the fuel car assembly of the world's factories, a leap into today's global new energy vehicle production and sales power. Only, the times have changed. Demographic dividend is no longer the primary factor considered by the automobile industry to invest in factories. First of all, the automobile manufacturing industry has shifted from a labor-intensive industry to a technology-intensive industry. Comprehensive foreign media reports the wave of layoffs that have already appeared in global car companies in 2022. Ford, starting with 580 layoffs in April 2022, the plants in Valencia, Spain, and Saarlouis, Germany, have also received additional restructuring notices. Ford's layoffs will reportedly reach 8,000. The goal is to reduce costs by $3 billion by 2026 through layoffs of this magnitude. Volkswagen has laid off about 5,000 employees, mostly production workers, by the end of 2022. Many reports say Ford will have 8,000 fewer employees by 2023. Audi reports of 9,500 layoffs by 2025. Renault reportedly plans to cut 2,000 jobs over 3 years. This corresponds to another category of job announcements from car companies focused on technical staff. For example, Renault plans to hire 2,500 people for positions such as data analysts. The automobile manufacturing industry is one of the industries with the highest level of automation in the global manufacturing industry, and many ordinary production line workers have begun to have their hands and feet liberated by industrial robots and mobile robots, freeing them from heavy manual labor. Taking Shanghai Tesla Super Factory as an example, the automation rate of automobile production line stamping and painting workshop has reached 100%, and workers will be used only when installing instrument panel, engine, and confirming the work of robots. At present, the global new energy vehicle production behind has involved a number of industries such as robotics, communications, artificial intelligence, and so on. And from Tesla's perspective, the problems that may be encountered in building a factory in India are real. 1. Supply chain. Parts rely on imports. High tariffs against the Indian factory cost advantage is not obvious. When labor costs are no longer the only element of cost reduction, the primary consideration for car companies to build cars is the supply chain. For example, today's Tesla Super Factory in Shanghai has a parts localization rate of 95%. It can be said that the huge vein of China's manufacturing is the underpinning of Tesla's factory that can efficiently build cars. However, India's new energy vehicle parts self-sufficiency rate is low. Building cars in India is equivalent to waiting for most imported parts to be assembled in India. First of all, this will lead to India's new energy automobile factory production efficiency is low. If you cannot realize the local self-sufficiency, the weak supply chain leads to low production efficiency. Stagnant production line cannot create value, for manufacturing enterprises, is a loss of money. Furthermore, India charges high tariffs on imports to protect its local industry. Although India said it plans to expand tariff exemptions to the field of electric vehicle batteries, but the current import tariffs on lithium batteries in India is still as high as nearly 40%. At this stage, most of the raw materials for lithium batteries in India to be imported from China, Indian companies, even the core electrodes are still not built, can only do low value-added packaging. 2. Market. Only 1% penetration of new energy vehicles. Price determines purchasing power. In 2021, the Indian media reported that more than 3 million vehicles were sold in India, making it the fourth largest auto consumer in the world. However, less than 1% of these were new energy vehicles. The Indian car market is still dominated by low-priced fuel cars. Have a car in India is also a status symbol. India's National Bureau of Statistics released data show that in 2021 India's per capita annual income equivalent to 15,000 yuan or so. Most fuel cars in India are sold for less than 1 million rupees, about $12,000. The average price of a fuel car, one of India's best-selling cars, starts at 549,000 rupees, about $7,000, which is still a big expense for most Indian consumers. Switch to a new energy vehicle and the situation becomes even more different. Even with government subsidies, most new energy cars in India are priced at more than 1 million rupees. In the Indian market, where most consumers can't afford fuel cars, price is the first factor that determines purchasing power. Tesla, such as high-end new energy vehicles, coupled with 100% high import tariffs, more so that most Indian consumers cannot afford. 3. Supporting facilities. Lack of charging piles, road infrastructure. Tesla Black technology is a sham. If you can't eliminate mileage anxiety, the new energy vehicle market outbreak is just a pipe dream. Technically, lithium battery energy density continues to improve, giving new energy vehicles longer range. Infrastructure. The market in the early stage. The means of replenishment is to promote new energy vehicle sales of the first power. The Chinese market is relying on continuous investment in charging pile infrastructure, absorbing the first wave of new energy vehicle users to taste. But the story becomes different in India. Some organizations predict that the Indian government, to complete the development of new energy vehicles target, need to configure the number of public charging pile 2.9 million. As of June 2021, there are only less than 1,000 charging piles and 100 charging stations in India, which is far from meeting the demand. The Indian government plans to build 10,000 charging stations in the next 2 years to promote the popularization of new energy models. Whether India can accomplish such a plan is still unknown. If the number of charging piles determines the basic sales of new energy vehicles in India, then the road infrastructure determines the bottom line of sales of high-end new energy vehicles. High-end new energy vehicle products focus on automatic assisted driving and other black technology. These experiences are difficult to show their talents in India. At present, in addition to a few Indian cities such as New Delhi, most Indian people will still walk on potholes and dirt roads on foot. Autopilot features struggle to recognize crowds of Indian people on bumpy roads, and algorithms struggle to react quickly to trespassing cattle. This makes black tech like Tesla null and void, and the path of trading techiness for high-end pricing may be blocked. Whether from the supply chain, market, or application, at this stage India is difficult to become the future potential market for high-end new energy vehicle companies like Tesla, Hyundai, Toyota, BYD, Suzuki and other car companies attacked India to build factories, more hope to low-end fuel vehicles, low-end new energy vehicle products, to occupy a place in the Indian automotive market. Made in India, yes or no? India's urgent need to grow the automotive industry chain, more new energy vehicle manufacturing as a future contribution of 25% of India's GDP pillar industry. Many people believe that India has people, markets, new energy vehicle stimulus policy, but it is impossible to replicate the myth of China's car. India charges high tariffs in the name of protecting local brands, in short, using high tariffs to promote investment and construction, and import quotas to expand production capacity. Overseas new energy automobile products with 60% to 100% tariff shackles, in the price-sensitive Indian market is even more difficult to sell. At the same time, in order to prevent car companies to build factories hanging sheep's head to sell dog meat, the Indian government also gave car companies to set quotas for imported vehicles. For example, Volkswagen had a factory in India Chakan, but only limited sales of electric cars ID.4 SUV. The Indian government only approved 2,500 passenger car imports. The rest of the production could only be built in Indian plants. However, such an approach is not based on cooperation and win-win situation. In recent years there have been several car companies lost to Indian use. Especially in India, to build a plant for 10 years, accumulated losses of $2 billion. Ford. 2021 September, Ford production line withdrew from India. The head of Ford India said that the Indian branch failed to find a sustainable path to long-term profitability. The implication is that there is no supply chain support, coupled with the lack of localized market demand. Ford does not intend to continue to play with India. Enterprises are profit-seeking, who will not always tolerate, to choose a project that cannot see the hope of cost recovery. The made-in-China exodus from the Indian automobile industry is also exacerbating supply chain disruptions. It was with this same motivation that the Indian government defeated Great Wall Motors' 2020 plan to buy GM's Indian plant for $300 million, and in July 2022, GM announced that it was cancelling the plan because it had been denied approval by Indian regulators. Great Wall Motor invested heavily in preliminary research and negotiations, and ultimately paid its dues. If it is to be decoupled from China's supply chain support, the maturity and completeness of India's new energy vehicle industry chain will be greatly reduced. Because India has not yet been able to learn from China's real core independent research and development and the determination to change lanes. India's automotive industry has had its share of good cards. In 2008, the Tata Group was lucky enough to buy two British car brands, Jaguar and Land Rover, against the backdrop of the global financial crisis. But the deal ultimately left the Tata Group as an idle shareholder, failing to participate in the production and operation of the two cars. 14 years after buying Jaguar and Land Rover, India's automotive supply chain remains weak. Indian factories can only assemble cars on a small scale, and the two brands' main factories are still built in Changshu, China, and Liverpool and Solihull in the UK. China's new energy vehicles, on the other hand, the toughness is mainly reflected in the focus on research and development. For example, the electrolyte in the upstream of the lithium battery was independently developed under the technology blockade and equipment embargo by Japanese companies. A full 12 years later, China's new energy automotive industry eventually moved from policy subsidy-driven to a more mature market-driven model. As automobile manufacturing enters the dual-carbon era and smart manufacturing, the once hand-knocked assembly workshops have been replaced with automated equipment, and the demographic dividend is no longer the only condition that attracts advanced enterprises. China's far-sighted choice of new energy automobile industry layout, focusing on new energy automobile 3 electric, battery, motor, electronic control system, breakthrough, while forming the advantages of the whole industry chain. The above is my sharing today. We will see you next time.